Welcome to Zoodio, brought to you by Tazoo, a global customer experience consultancy focused on creating and delivering digital experiences. At Zoodio, we promise you interesting conversations about customer experience, digital experience, user experience, design, and technology, uniting to build better moments for organizations around the world. I'm your host, Heather Broxson. Today, we'll be chatting to Gabi Macy, Tazoo's Executive Vice President of Business Operations. We'll chat about her career, women in leadership, and women in the workforce after COVID-19. Gabi, it's so great to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Heather. I'm so excited. This is such a fun opportunity. Thank you. I'm honored that you want to chat with me.
We're honored to have you, Executive Vice President of Business Operations. If you don't mind me asking, what does that mean?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially what I do is pretty much everything that is not related to delivering work for a client, to be honest. So I'm all the behind the scenes stuff. So, my team is mostly HR, finance, administration, some of the recruiting, sometimes I help out with, helping out with some of Arden's role with the policies and procedures and handling basically all of that stuff that kind of makes the company run. And then I also work very closely with Brad. I've been working with him for almost 10 years now. So I had started actually with Tazoo as the business development coordinator, which essentially just meant I was the only non-billable person in the company. So I had to basically do everything that meant, whether it was making sure the office was stocked or interviewing people or putting together slide decks for proposals or helping out with SOWs. I mean, it was pretty much everything behind the scenes of the company. So that has obviously been a great opportunity. And I've fortunately taken on a lot more responsibilities over the last 10 years. And so it's pretty much all the behind the scenes stuff.
Here you are. Which number hire were you when you joined?
I was number 25. I was the last one to get just my first name as my email. That was kind of the nomenclature there. So yeah, it was, there were 24 other people with us. We just had one tiny office in DC and one tiny office in Richmond. Not the one that we're currently in or the one before that, or even the one before that. It was a really tiny little place in a kind of like an industrial office park. And then in DC, we were right downtown in DuPont Circle. It was this gorgeous, gorgeous office with full plate glass windows. But people would often knock on the window because I was usually the only one there and ask if it was a furniture store because it was so beautiful. And I was just me hanging out in there. So they were like, what are you doing in there? So yeah.
That's amazing. What brought you to Tazoo? How did you?
It was totally just serendipity. Honestly, I moved to DC with my then boyfriend, now husband, about 10 and a half, 11 years ago. And I was kind of finishing up another role. I wanted to take some time off and really find a good fit. And so I took a couple of months and I interviewed at a ton of different companies. I got a bunch of offers and it just never felt quite right. And so I responded to a Craigslist ad, which is the most bizarre way to get a job at Tazoo ever. But, I responded and I met Brad. And it's funny, for those of you in DC, I had gone to the DuPont Circle Metro and thinking I was very fancy going to the Metro to a job interview for my first time. And I got off on the totally wrong side of DuPont Circle. So I had to walk basically a mile and a half to get to the office. And I show up for my interview with Brad and he's like, hey, let's walk and get coffee. So I walked all the way back. So I was sweating in high heels, trying to look nice for an interview and also trying to play it cool. I wasn't, about to die.
So you really, going from being a business development person up to an executive vice president. It's such a fancy title. It was kind of quite a ladder to climb. You've gone a long way.
So, it's one of those things. I think I was just fortunate enough to be able to really grow and learn in the role and take on a lot of new stuff. When we went through a couple of acquisitions and ultimately a divestiture and kind of setting up some new entities in different countries and stuff like that, I was able to really learn a lot and focus my energies on that, which is great. And so, one of the things about Tazoo that I think a lot of people probably don't quite understand when they first join is a lot of it is like institutional historic knowledge. We've done work with this person in the past and it was like this. And, we had this awesome employee who did all of these fantastic things and they left to go do something else and then they came back, and it's kind of like all of that like glue history that kind of keeps everything running. And so I think I'm fortunate enough to be one of those kind of, I don't know, historians of Tazoo. So I kind of have a lot of the backstories on a lot of different things. And overall, I think just come into work every day with a positive attitude and ready to take on the world. That's kind of what got me here. So
yeah, that's so great. Did you always were you was your goal to be in leadership? Was that something is that something you've always wanted to do? Did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't necessarily know that I wanted to take in a role in leadership or anything. I think I just have a natural desire to organize things, to take care of people, to make sure that we're good communicators. I'm really proud to work at Tazoo and I want other people to be really proud. And so I think sometimes just taking that ambition and harnessing it kind of puts you into positions of management and leadership at times. And I'm just grateful that for some reason I'm still here. I don't even know, but it's one of those things. I think you just kind of, you just embrace how things go and, keep on going.
As somebody who, works at Tazoo and not in leadership, I find you're very inspiring. There's not a lot of women in leadership in upper levels of leadership at companies, period, across the board in the States.
Oh, it's a shame. Why?
It's so sad. So if nothing else, you're inspiring other women.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any women who've inspired you? Have you been influenced by other women in your life?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have been really fortunate all throughout my career. I've worked with really strong leader women, honestly, which is kind of funny. I come from a little bit of a different background. I worked in hospitality. I did a lot of events and restaurant management and stuff like that. I worked for a real estate company where I worked first in the sales department, then in the rental department. And at all of those different career junctures, I've had incredibly strong women who have been my kind of mentors, role models, it never mattered if they were a man or a woman. They got the same exact amount of respect. And so I just always kind of went into my role thinking that same thing. And, my mom is an ICU nurse or was an ICU nurse for about 35 years. So that's also one of those jobs where you kind of have to be strong and you kind of have to be pretty ambitious and ready to, take on any challenges that get thrown your way. My grandmother on my mom's side, she's a businesswoman. In a small town in Delaware where there's not that many business women, to be honest. And she is the toughest negotiator I've ever met in my entire life. She owned a jewelry and an antique store for, I think, 30 years. And so she just has this knack of taking charge of things and being in control of situations. And so I think at all of those different inspiring points for my personal life, those have been awesome, just to have those women who, have kind of already, I don't know, taken over as career people and business women and, have definitely led the way for people like me. On a more professional level, I mean, this year or the past, I don't know, 2 years, I've been so inspired by so many women, especially in the DC area. Kamala Harris being the first woman vice president has been so inspiring. I know. And the unfortunate passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has been one of my heroes for quite some time, but, just reflecting on her career after her passing was also one of those, wow, think of what so much this one woman did, and so much for other people. That's the kind of thing that really, I don't know, it makes me want to work harder and be better and be stronger for other women in the future.
Yeah, certainly. Changing tracks a little bit. So obviously we're at fingers crossed, the end of, the global pandemic, at least in the States, as our vaccination numbers are rising. But with the pandemic, there's been such a it's had such a huge impact on everybody, but specifically on women, like with, childcare and the house care, everything spiking because everyone's home all the time and the kids don't have school. And so it was McKinsey that reported that 3 million women have left the workforce in the US alone.
And just since March of 2020. So literally within the last, 18 months or less, it's been 3 million women leaving the workforce. It's insane.
How has the pandemic impacted you personally? Like having your fancy job, and then also you have kids, right? You have a child?
I do. I have a 3.5-year-old son. So I will say that having my son in general has been the most humbling thing that I've ever done in my entire life. I got to tell you, I'm a very organized, detailed, disciplined person. And when I make a plan and he doesn't want to do that, I am not in control and I am not in charge. So he's going to run the show. So for me, over the past 18 months or so, it's been very challenging. Unfortunately, he was at an age where he wasn't very self-contained, and he wasn't very, he can't entertain himself. He's still at that age where he just constantly wants me to hang out with him and watch shows and play and, do Play-Doh at, 10:30 in the morning. Why not? That sounds great. So for me, that was definitely a big shift. I think obviously so many people went through this. And to be honest, I know that there's women who work at Tazoo that have many more children than I do. So I am definitely not complaining. I know you guys definitely have had a lot more to go through than I have on that front. But yeah, it's a challenge. My husband and I both work. We both work full time, and constantly shuffling between video calls, like, okay, who's going to put him down for a nap? Okay, I've got 2 hours that I can work really furiously while he's sleeping, and then, wake up, take a half an hour break, go, get him settled and situated. And so, yeah, it's been a total adjustment. It's been a total change. Fortunately, his daycare started back up. So I've been lucky enough to be able to go back into the office and be kind of a little bit back to normal, my daily routine and stuff. My heart totally goes out to, women who their kids didn't go back to school in person, or they didn't have daycare options, or maybe they were caring for, a sick loved one, like a parent or somebody like that, who's also going through this incredibly scary, never before done situation. And so we're all just kind of in this weird, I don't know, emotional zone where at any given moment, you're kind of okay, is everything okay? I'm worried, is it going to get back to normal? Do I want it to get back to normal? Do I want to change things about normal? All of these kind of uncertain times. And as I said earlier, I like to know the plan. I like to have a plan for today and tomorrow and next week and next month. And I don't like to be in these levels of uncertainty like this. So I would just say for me, it's been an emotional journey to just kind of get things back on track, but doing a lot better.
Some women like you have been able to keep their job and just do it all. But so many women have not. Do you think that moving forward, as childcare and schools are opening back up, women are going to be able to just re-enter and reinsert themselves and restart their careers? Or do you think we're going to see just a dearth of women in the workforce for a while moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's kind of, it's one of those things that I hope that women are going to be re-entering the workforce really soon, probably I would hope in the next couple of months, as school starts back up in the fall, and hopefully again, the world continues to, or at least the United States continues to get even more and more folks vaccinated and a much safer environment for people. I would say at Tazoo, we are absolutely trying to hire as diverse of a community as we possibly can, whether it's gender identity or sexual orientation, whatever it is. We are definitely emphasizing that we want to have folks from all walks of life, because that's what our clients are as well. We're constantly working with clients that are coming from very diverse backgrounds. I mean, our client list couldn't be any more different when you're looking at just in terms of who we work with. So I think it's super important that we keep that at the forefront of our minds. And I know Sarah, our recruiter, is doing an awesome job of making sure that we're trying to be as equal opportunity as possible and just give everybody, everybody a chance to work at Tazoo.
Yeah, that's great. So come apply, everybody out there.
Yeah, please come work with us. Yeah, it would be great. Especially ladies. Come on, let's get some more girls in here.
What do you think the lack of women in the workforce, and not just in the United States, like this has been seen all over the world, or I guess the greater lack of women in the workforce, because there already was less women in the workforce. What do you think this means for the world? Like, what impact does this have on businesses?
Sure, sure. So there's a study, I think it was from McKinsey, and they actually had a statistic that said that companies that have women in positions of leadership in their organization are 50% more likely to have higher returns on investment and profitability. So, I don't necessarily know the specifics on how, women slightly turn things, but I would say that by nature, we have just some different characteristics. Generally speaking, we're usually have greater attention to detail on certain things, or we also exude empathy, and we're also sometimes willing to be more vulnerable than our male counterparts are. And I think all of that actually brings together just a different feeling within an organization. So I think that overall the characteristics that women bring to the workplace, to leadership, to every environment, it's kind of almost like the glue again that kind of holds the communities together. When you think about like just a traditional female, she's usually managing a whole household, she's managing the doctor's appointments and the dentist appointments and the soccer practice and the sleepover and the favorite cookies because it's somebody's birthday, all of those like mental to-do lists that kind of make things more, more inviting and more homey, and you feel comfortable. And so I think that for companies overall, like having a lack of female presence is definitely a disadvantage to them. So here at Tazoo, we're definitely trying to make sure that we don't have that problem.
What do you think businesses can do to help retain women and keep people who have to take care for children and have to care for elders and have to have all these responsibilities in the workforce?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to have a really flexible environment overall. At Tazoo, we have been a very flexible company kind of since the beginning. If you needed to work from home, you needed to leave for a little bit to go to an appointment, I think we're pretty accommodating overall. But just continuing to also understand that like during certain times of the day, I have my kids' homework, or, I have to go pick up my kids. For me personally, I have to leave the office by like 4:30 every day because I have to go pick him up. The daycare closes, I gotta go. And it's one of those things that if I had just started at Tazoo, I may have felt more timid about talking about that. So I had the benefit of being at the company for 6 years before I had my son, and I was really lucky that Brad and various members of my team are very understanding and accommodating of those types of things. And I would just say that I would encourage everybody at Tazoo to be understanding, be respectful, but also for, the folks that may be, encountering having to take a burden of childcare or, caregiving or something like that. Set your boundaries and just be clear about them, and just also live up to them and say, hey, I really have to be here at this time, or I really have to leave by now, but I'll be back online when you need me, or you can call me, or I can talk in the car, like kind of that like give and get that you get when you just kind of set clear boundaries and work around them. I think everybody that I can think of at Tazoo is very understanding of the personal side of life too. You need to take a day off because you just need a mental health day. No problem. I totally get it, or you just need to have a family day and go to Dave and Buster's. Totally understand and totally support this. It's one of those things that I think we have over the past 18 months or so taken so much on as individuals that it's hard sometimes to decompress, even just in a weekend. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like it's Friday night and then it's Sunday night. What just into 2 days? Like, how am I going right back to work? And so just taking that time for yourself and being open and honest and setting boundaries, and then being respectful of other people's boundaries too.
I guess, do you see a difference in how this works between people who work remotely and people who work out of an office?
I think folks that work remotely have a little bit more of a system and a way that they've probably been doing it for quite some time. I think the people who had been working in an office and then were kind of suddenly forced to be working from home, they might not have the same system set up. Again, it really just depends on the person, and it kind of depends on the environment. Again, for me personally, I live in DC, so I have a tiny house and a dog and husband and a kid, and it was really loud for a good 6 months just because, trying trying to find one place or another. My husband's in the basement on calls. I'm on the third floor on calls, just trying to make it work. So I think like if you have a good setup and you kind of have your rhythm and your way of doing things, works pretty well. Fortunately, I think Tazoo transitioned pretty well overall. Like we didn't have any big hiccups with people not knowing how to work from home or, not being responsible when they needed to be. So we were really fortunate during all of that to just kind of be set up and pretty resilient overall.
So with all of the women who've left the workplace, I think that leaves us wondering, like, what impact does this have? Like, is it really a problem? Or, did we not need those women in the workplace? Like, some people could ask. As a woman, I of course disagree, but some people might wonder. So what do you think having this lack of women means for the world or for businesses or the bottom line? What impact does it have?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it'll continue to kind of play out over the next few months as businesses are kind of continuing onwards with less women in their workforce as a whole. I read a statistic recently and it said that companies or organizations that have women in positions of leadership are 50% more likely to have profitability and a higher share price than companies that don't have women. And so that alone is also, the foundation as to why it's important. We very much so emphasize diversity and inclusion in our organizations. So, as far as what it means for businesses kind of moving forward, I think it's interesting because a lot of traditional gender stereotypes of a woman are very much so you're kind of praised for being polite and quiet and organized and kind of going along with the flow and, being maybe just willing to not speak your mind sometimes, even if you have an opinion, whereas boys are often praised for being gregarious and outgoing and having perspective and having opinions. And so it's just kind of interesting now as we see this huge shift of women leaving the workforce. I mean, companies are going to have a total different set of skills that they're going to be missing and not even probably realizing it until there's situations that are, firing up and then, kind of thinking about like, what was the thing that all of these different women brought to the dynamic that changed? And, I think that it goes without saying, but companies that don't have diverse, inclusive environments are at a disadvantage. They're not looking at the whole picture of the world and they're not able to complement each other. You and I, like, we might be similar in certain ways, but we also bring very different perspectives, very different opinions, very different backgrounds, and so it's just important that we're pulling folks from all different walks of life together so that we can be just a great organization as a whole.
So we always ask this question. Do you have a $1 million app idea that you'd like to share with us?
I was thinking about that. I recently got a new sofa for the first time in 7 years or something. And I have a 90-pound Irish setter who stays at home with my husband all day long and is very used to being able to hang out on the sofa at any moment that he wants to. So now this new sofa, he's not allowed on it. So my app idea, I think that we need to be able to create some sort of invisible fence or, I don't know, perimeter around areas where pets are not supposed to go. The trash for one thing, or, on certain furniture, every time I leave the room, he slinks up thinking that he's being so stealthy and I have to walk in and be like, what are you doing? So, maybe it wouldn't be like a shot collar, but it would just be like my voice yelling at him. So that would be my idea. So some sort of invisible fence that wouldn't actually hurt an animal, but just gives them a little nudge that that's not okay for them to be there. That would be my idea.
I love that. I feel like you could do some sort of sensor that then takes an image, and so then on your app you can mark the areas.
Totally. Yeah.
This is where they shouldn't go.
Exactly. Yeah. He's very cute and snuggly, but he has long, lustrous red locks that just get everywhere if he gets on furniture. So
yeah, that sounds so cool. And I don't know if you have this issue in DC, but in Seattle, of course, with all of our rain, there's always mud. always mud. And of course, my puppy loves to lay in it and get it all over everything. So
totally understand.
Sign me up.
All right. Awesome. That sounds great. I've already got a buyer. All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gabi, for sharing your thoughts with us on women in the workplace. It's such a big and heavy topic. And so I really appreciate you coming here today to speak with us. Do you have any words of encouragement or advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Um, I think that it's important for all of us to remember that time is the most valuable thing that we have. And so spend time with your family, spend time with your kids, spend time being mentally healthy. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders and I need to sometimes just take a breath and take perspective on exactly what's important and make sure that I focus on that. So I would say for everybody listening, be grateful for what you have, take a moment and just appreciate this moment because you're never going to get it back. And you also have to also remember that you're constantly impacting people's lives in ways that you probably don't even know. So, women like you, Heather, inspire me. The women of Tazoo inspire me. So many folks of Tazoo, like, coming together. I feel like I just am so grateful for the opportunity to work with all of you. And I hope that I can do you all justice by being strong and helping to run the business in the best way possible. So
Again, thanks so much to Gabi for sharing her thoughts with us. And thank you for listening to Zoodio. Please like and subscribe wherever you listen. Until we meet again, let's go be great.